Today is Saturday, March 29th. After years of delays, the Real ID deadline is finally approaching. Starting May 7th, 2025, you will need a Real ID or valid passport to fly within the U.S. With just over 1 month to go, we're making sure you have everything you need to know to be travel ready. And while we're on the topic of travel, we're also diving into this year's top travel trends, including expert tips to find affordable, unforgettable destinations. Later in the show, you'll hear from Katie Nastro, spokesperson for the travel app Going, known for helping people save 40 to 90% on flights. But first, California DMV spokesperson Chris Orrock joins us to break down what Real ID is, who needs it, and how to get yours before the clock runs out. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Chris Orrock, thank you so much for joining us here on the Newsworthy.
My pleasure.
So first, I just want to briefly remind everyone what the Real ID is and why it was created in the first place. Can you give us that rundown?
Yeah, a federal ID comes out of the September 11th plane crashes. The federal government decided that they wanted to have a ID that met certain specifications as far as proof of who the person was and where they lived. So in 2005, the Real ID Act was passed and signed into law, which required each state to put together a form of a Real ID, which is a federally compliant identification. In order to get a Real ID in the state of California, you have to show a proof of who you are. So it could be a birth certificate, a passport, something that is a government document proving who you are. And then you have to show two forms of where you live. So maybe that's a utility bill or a cable bill, an insurance bill that comes to your name that is the same name on your federal identifying document to the address you say you live at.
And obviously every state's going to be different.
Every other state has a different way, but they all require the same documents in order to have a Real ID.
So you talked about this coming out of the September 11th attacks, that the Real ID Act was passed in 2005. And my understanding is that the original deadline for this was way back in 2008, right? But there's been several delays where here we are in 2025, and it's likely finally going to go into effect. So can you just briefly tell us what happened, why we were so delayed?
One of the main reasons it got delayed a couple times was because of the COVID pandemic. With the offices closing down for a period of time, people were not able to come in and finalize their application. But other delays happened because just allowing each state to properly prepare for the Real ID caused some delay in the implementation. But we don't see any more delays. May 7th, 2025 is the date that the federal government will start enforcing the Real ID when you go to an airport, try to get through TSA security, or try to go to a federal courthouse or other federal building.
Right. So as you just said, starting May 7th, it'll be required that you have, even for domestic air travel, that you have a Real ID or your passport. The old type of driver's license is not going to be enough. Do you think that, basically 1 month out now, that most people know this and are prepared? Or are people in this last month going to face, long waits for DMV appointments, long lines expected in the final weeks, around the country generally? Are there still a lot of people that need to take this final step?
Well, we've only seen about 54% of people in California who have a driver's license or identification card upgrade to a Real ID at this point in time. But we've seen a uptick in the number of people coming in the last couple months to get a Real ID. And a lot of it's going to depend on the TSA and how they implement their enforcement at the airport. We're hearing different things from them, that it's going to be a phased in process that starting May 7th, they're going to be looking for a Real ID and they're going to be reminding people. But each airport is going to decide how they fully implement it by their TSA guidelines. And we don't think people in those first couple months are going to be turned away from the airport. However, why risk it?
That was exactly my next question, is are people going to be turned away at the airport starting May 7th? So that is good information to know that maybe not, but it's also a risk.
Right. And that's completely up to the federal TSA and how they implement this program.
To be clear, though, kids are exempt. And also, is it if you have a military ID?
So a military ID is a form of federal ID. Military ID, a matricular card, a passport, those are all forms. And there's a whole list that we link off our website that goes to the Department of Homeland Security, and they have that list of what's allowed to be used. And yes, children are exempt from having a real ID.
And when you say children, you mean under 18?
Correct.
So I know this is also a little bit different state by state, but if someone's not sure if they already have a real ID, because maybe they just didn't realize it when they went to the DMV to renew their driver's license, how can people check if they have it? Will they see it on their driver's license?
Yeah, pull out your driver's license or ID card. If in the upper right-hand corner, there is a star, that is a real ID. And it's important to know that they are state specific. So what I mean by that is I have my real ID here in California. If I move to another state, I have to do the process all over again. I have to have those identifying documents, the identifying not only who I am, the passport, birth certificate, but also those residency required documents. So say if I moved to Texas, I would have to start the process all over again in Texas to get a Texas federally compliant real ID. It doesn't just transfer from state to state.
Any misconceptions about the real ID or the process that you've seen going around, or anything else about it that you think we need to address?
Well, I think the biggest thing is some people think that May 7th is the deadline to get a real ID. And May 7th is the enforcement deadline. So that's when they're starting to enforce having to have a real ID or other federally compliant ID to get through TSA or go into a federal building. We will continue to issue real IDs as long as people are asking for them.
Still ahead, planning a trip to Europe? There's a new visa requirement to know about. Up next, Katie Nastro from the travel app Going joins me to chime in on both the real ID in America and what you need to travel internationally. Plus, she's sharing top picks for summer destinations and how to score the best travel deals to save money. That and more coming up. But first, a quick break for our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Hiya Health. Whether my kiddo is in an eat anything phase or buttered noodles only phase, I at least know Hiya's best-selling children's vitamins are helping to fill gaps in his diet and support his growing body and brain no matter what. I started giving him Hiya vitamins right when he turned 2, and now at 3.5 years old, he's still loving them as part of his morning routine. So much so that we've also added in Hiya's Kids Probiotic along the way. I love that Hiya is made with 0 sugar, tastes great, and that every batch is third-party tested for heavy metals, so I know they're safe and nutritious. And if you're tired of battling with your kids to eat their greens, Hiya now has Kids Daily Greens Plus Superfoods, a chocolate-flavored greens powder designed specifically for kids, packed with more than 55 whole food ingredients to support brain power, development, and digestion. Just scoop, shake, and sip with milk or any non-dairy beverage for a delicious and nutritious boost your kids will actually enjoy. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy. This deal is not available on their regular website. So go to hiyahealth.com/newsworthy and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. The Newsworthy is also brought to you by Skims. As a mom and someone who works from home, I always appreciate high-quality tees, both short and long sleeve. They are wardrobe essentials for me. I love them because I can dress them up or down and feel great no matter what I'm doing. But finding that perfect fit and feel can be a challenge. And yet Skims t-shirts seem to hit the mark every time. You've heard me talk about Skims tees before, and now my newest get is the cotton jersey long sleeve t-shirt. I wore it the other day, and once again, I get the hype. There are so many dupes online, but nothing compares to the real thing. Other long sleeves right up or bunch at the waist, but this one stays put. And as always, Skims comes through with how the tee flatters my waist and just has a great fit and feel overall. See what I mean when you shop Skims tees, as well as their ultimate bra collection and more at skims.com and Skims LA flagship on Sunset Boulevard. After you place your order, be sure to let them know we sent you, select podcast in the survey, and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Now to my conversation with Katie Nastro from the travel app Going. Katie Nastro, thank you so much for joining us here on the Newsworthy.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So first, what do you think are a couple of the most important things travelers need to know about the upcoming Real ID deadline?
It is drawing near, and I don't want people to get in the mindset of thinking that, oh, this will just be pushed back once again. Only half of Americans have a passport, which is another form of ID that you're able to use for domestic travel if you don't have a real ID. So, I just think that it is in your best interest, even if you want to just go visit your friends or your grandparents or, family elsewhere in another state, and you are looking to get on a flight, you should definitely take this deadline seriously to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they are actually going to be turning people away starting May 7th, or if there's going to be a grace period there. And it sounds like we don't know for sure.
Well, exactly. You would hope that there would be a grace period, but do we know how long that grace period will last? Do we know if it will come into effect? Again, better be safe than sorry.
Any other misconceptions that you've heard about Real ID that you think is important to clear up?
I think a lot of people think that they can just sort of, walk into the DMV and they'll be able to get an appointment, whereas that's sort of not the case. We're hearing, not rumors, but we're hearing from a lot of people that there are hefty wait times and appointments are becoming sort of really scarce. I don't want people to sort of put this off, thinking that it's going to be easy, or think that you can just apply online. It's not necessarily like that. Only some states you're able to get sort of pre-screened. For example, New York is one of them, and that will make your processing a lot easier. However, each state is different. So it is in your best interest to go online, go to dhs.gov/realid, and there is a dropdown that will direct you to your state's DMV, and it will clearly sort of spell out what exactly is needed, what sort of the process is for your specific state.
That's a great point, because as we near this deadline, I imagine that it's also going to be covered more and more in the news, which means more people are going to realize they might need it. And do you expect those wait times to only get longer?
Oh, for sure. As well as, if you do have a passport, I think a lot of people tend to forget about their expiration dates. And, a lot of people not only forgetting that the expiration date is sort of drawing near, but the fact that if you are looking to travel, especially abroad, and you have a passport, you need at least 6 months validity on that passport. So that's something, I think a lot of people are going to start realizing as they look to use their passport in place of the Real ID when that time comes. So it's sort of a twofold occurrence that we might see happen.
Final thought about Real ID before we move on to other things.
Don't wait till the last minute is my biggest piece of advice. May 7th is going to be here before we know it. We're just about over a month out, and, I think it will catch up to a lot of folks.
So another thing that we expected this year was that Americans would need special visas to travel to Europe. Now my understanding is that's been delayed to 2026, right? Can you tell us about that?
Correct. Yeah, the ETIAS has been pushed back to 2026, and it's likely it just wasn't set up and ready for the amount of people that were likely to be looking to apply for it.
Remind us why this requirement came about in the first place.
It's supposed to make everything a little bit more seamless, if you have this sort of pre-screen clearance. If it's anything like the ETA that the UK is now requiring Americans and other countries to apply for, that process, super, super easy. It was an app. It took me not even 20 minutes. Gosh, I think it was 10 minutes to get approved. And so I envision that the ETIAS, when that is rolled out fully, it's going to be pretty similar.
All right, let's shift to the top travel trends that you're seeing for 2025. What's standing out to you?
Revenge travel is definitely done. People are traveling with more purpose. And, with a lot of economic uncertainty sort of going into this year, I think a lot of people are, being purposeful with their travel, not traveling just to be able to go somewhere, but doing it distinctly for a specific reason and making sure that their dollars are going to an experience or a vacation that they really want to travel for.
Anything standing out to you about how people have started to spend their spring break or are about to spend it?
This year, I think a lot of people, again, they're being more purposeful in where they decide to travel to and spend their dollars in terms of, am I getting, like an affordable price from a vacation? Or are they opting to maybe not necessarily take a spring break and maybe they opt to just look at summer travel?
So speaking of summer, any top trends or destinations you're watching right now?
79% of our respondents in our Going State of Travel for 2025 are looking to go to Europe. It's one of those areas that it's really a condensed area that you can hit so many different spots, and it's easy to travel in between countries. And there's so many different cultures and experiences to be had in a small section of the world. But one surprising sort of flag that we are seeing is that, Gen Z is more opting to explore places outside of Europe than any other demographic, which I think is telling. Asia is topping the list, as well as parts of Latin America, Australasia, so, Australia, New Zealand. Another surprising thing is people are looking to explore outside of cities. Beaches, national parks and forests, small towns and countrysides are sort of neck and neck with where people are looking to opt for. And we call this sort of detourism. Yes, these big name cities that top bucket lists are always popular, like a London, a Rome, a Paris. But looking at sort of these second cities and countryside villages is really something that I think a lot of people are going to explore more as they get sort of crowd fatigue.
What are you seeing within America?
The great outdoors is really having a moment, and majority of people that are looking to travel in 2025, over 58% of them are looking to get outdoors and are looking to explore places in the US where they're able to do so. So places like California, the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, Hawaii, they're in our top 10 most looked at destinations within the US that people want to travel to.
And your top tips for finding deals and affordable prices?
We always talk about letting the deal decide. A lot of people plan their travel backwards, where they have this set destination and then they look into when they want to go, and then they look into the flight or the accommodation. When we actually want people to flip that on its head, if you really want to maximize, your likelihood of finding a great deal. So, starting with, okay, where can I go that's affordable, that has a great flight deal right now? Using the Going app to explore destinations, what deals are available, using Google Flights Explore feature, looking on the map to see, okay, these are the deals available at the moment that I'm looking to search for travel, what fits within the dates that I'm able to travel to. And then, okay, does this all line up? Is this a place I really want to explore? And I think people tend to forget about the 24-hour rule when they book travel or airfare in general. You have 24 hours to decide when you book directly with an air carrier if you want to even go to that place. Do some research within that 24 hours. If you decide you don't want to take that flight, you can cancel and get your money back. No questions asked, no hassle. It's not a whole rigmarole. It'll just get debited back to your credit card or whatever method of payment.
So to quickly recap, search for deals, not destinations. Jump on a deal when you find it. You can always cancel within 24 hours. And then be flexible on your dates, I imagine, so that you can find those deals.
As well as, I think one tip that people are really going to take advantage of in 2025 is price alerts. We're seeing many different travel providers, sort of roll out price alerts. It really is going to save people money before and after booking by getting alerted that prices have dropped. If you book a main economy ticket, on most carriers, you're able to just call the carrier, have them cancel and rebook you at that lower price, and just get a travel credit to be used in the future.
Final thought as we wrap up, or anything else you want to add?
I think with a lot of economic uncertainty, I think people are looking at travel as this sort of discretionary spending that is on the chopping block at first. But I do think that people can still travel affordably, even if they are sort of in this weird, I don't know what's going to happen with the economy mindset. Services like Going wouldn't exist if we weren't helping people travel affordably. Like, you still can do so even in uncertain economic times.
Well, thank you so much to both of our guests today. We'll link to the government's Real ID website. If you still have any questions, you can find that in today's episode notes. And of course, check out the Going app or go to going.com to save money on flights. They even have a free trial if you're interested in giving it a try. Thank you so much for listening and joining us today. We'll, of course, remind you in our daily news show as the Real ID deadline approaches in early May. And we'll keep you updated on all the other news to know in just about 10 minutes every weekday. So we'll be back on Monday with your next news roundup. Until then, have a great rest of the weekend.